that's all I'm going to say about it. Yeah, I don't want to talk about this book anymore. Kia ora everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Renee, and today I am going to be talking about the books that I read in October. Another month spent in lockdown, bad for the social life, missing things, but good for the reading. And actually not all that bad for the social life because I'm pretty antisocial anyway. Let's just get right into it. Okay. The first book that I read in October was Beautiful World, Where Are You? By Rooney. Wasn't my fave. Actually was a book that I really didn't enjoy all that much. A lot of things have been said about this book, a lot of critique, a lot of criticism, a lot of really positive reviews as well. People really enjoyed this book, and I can understand why. If you're a Rooney fan, I think it gave the typical kinds of characters that she normally writes. Millennials that don't know how to communicate and end up kind of making themselves miserable by not sharing their feelings with each other, or being able to decide what it is that they want from certain things in life. And it was cute the first 2 times for me, but the third time it just kind of started to feel a little bit boring, and I just wanted something different from her. She did, however, try to give that in the emails that you get between the 2 main characters. But again, that didn't really work for me. It felt very different. It just felt too different for me. This typical kind of Rooney story that you have with these characters, and then these really unbelievable conversations that 2 best friends are having about Marxism, the fall of the Bronze Age, religion, God, like all these concepts that, I don't know, it just really felt like she was trying to do 2 different things in one book, and it didn't work for me. So that's all I'm going to say about it. I don't want to talk about this book anymore. Okay, the next book that I read in October was Tangi by Witi Ihimaera. This is a book that a lot of people probably hadn't heard of. In fact, Kieran and I know that there are no YouTube videos on this book, so we were like, oh, we will be the first ones. So I read this book as a buddy read with Kieran from Kieran Books. He kindly reached out and asked for recommendations for not just New Zealand writers, but specifically Māori writers, which I was so stoked about. Anyone who's interested in reading Māori writers, I am a big fan of, so thank you, Kieran. And then I recommended Witi Ihimaera to him. Oh, that's going to keep going off. I'm just going to turn it off for 2 seconds. It's like our automatic fly spray thing. Okay, I don't know if that worked, but I'm hoping it doesn't go off again. Okay, where was I? Tangi, that's right. This was the buddy read that I did with Kieran. I was super stoked that he reached out. And this book was a bit of a mixed one for me. I was really appreciative of the story, what it kind of entailed. I should probably explain what that is. So tangi in Māori means, or is short for the word Tangihanga, which means funeral, which is what this book is about. It is about the funeral of a father, the father specifically of Tama, who is the main character that we follow in this story. Tama is the eldest boy of 6 siblings, and he is 24. He has moved away from the small town that his family lives. I won't even say it's a town, they live on a farm. They live on a farm in a very small town, away from a town on the east coast of New Zealand called Waitohi. He has decided to move to Wellington to experience life as a young person, and it's there that he one day receives a call from one of his sisters to say that their father has passed away, and that he has to come home because it's now his job to, as the older sibling, take care of the family. So really the story starts there, and it's Tama's journey from Wellington back to Waitohi, and we're really with him as he's kind of processing this. He's grieving the loss of his father. He is feeling immense weight and pressure to fill the shoes of this man that he's spent his whole entire life looking up to, admiring, respecting for the man that he is, the hard worker that he is, and he's just really unsure about how it is he's going to be able to carry on with life. It's a story about grief and love, and it really centres those things, but in a Māori world. So things are kind of, I guess, represented in different ways that might be foreign to some people. This whole story is leading up to this tangi, so the funeral of the father. And traditionally a tangi, a body would be taken to a marae, and there it would lay for 3 days, and during those 3 days people would come, they would be welcomed onto the marae, they would pay their respects, say their goodbyes, and then that would happen just through all hours. It's a very draining, emotional, taxing time, but it also is one of the most beautiful ways, I think, to celebrate a person's life. It's all I've ever known when it comes to death, and I think that to portray that in this story and for people to be reading this, seeing it and understanding it is really beautiful. It's something that I'm super grateful for. I think that the way that the book is written really reflects the process and the time of a tangihanga. It's a very exhausting, it's a very emotional time, and the book was a very exhausting and emotional. We had a lot of repeated phrases, repeated feelings for this main character, Tama. You know, he is just going over and over and over this immense grief that he feels, and in some parts it does get quite dull and it is hard to kind of wade through. So yeah, I'm just super grateful for Kieran for asking me to read this with him, and for his genuine interest in reading outside of the culture that he knows. We had a lot of great conversations around the similarities and the loss of the language between the Māori and the Welsh people, and it was really cool to just kind of meet someone through the internet and feel like you would never have anything in common, but actually you have things in common that you might not know. So yeah, that was really, really cool, and yeah, I'm just super grateful to have read this book, but at the same time can understand that it is like very specific to people, a culture, a way of life, a way of grieving and a way of death that just might seem really hard for others to try to grasp. So I really liked it, but I know it's not for everyone. Okay, the third book that I read was Trust by Domenico Starnone. Now, this book I've received as a uncorrected proof through NetGalley. Thank you to NetGalley and Europa Editions for allowing me access to this. My first Domenico Starnone. He is an Italian writer, and this is translated from Italian to English by Jhumpa Lahiri, so that was also really cool. I think she translates most of his work. Sorry, this drink is going to make me really gassy. It's just fantastic. Ties I also have, which is also translated by Jhumpa Lahiri. So yeah, this book also had a really good afterword in it, written by her, and she kind of goes over the way or certain words and I guess ideas and the real essence of the book that she tried to translate from one language to another, which I found really interesting. So anyway, this story centers a character, Pietro, who is a teacher and a writer. We follow him through the relationships that he has with the women that surround him. He's surrounded by these women in his life, but he is kind of the thing that orbits this world. Is definitely him and his story and what he is going through. The women in this story are really minor characters. It's about dysfunctional relationships, but not in really obvious ways. The way that Starnone has presented this character of Pietro is so subtle and so just light-handed that you don't know whether he is someone we're supposed to love or hate, and that is what makes this character so real. I know that dysfunctional, or I don't even want to say dysfunctional, it's just like real relationships between men and women. There were some really clever ways, not clever, but just like ways that the differences between men and women, specifically when it came to domestic roles, and you know, that idea of the woman giving up her dreams so that the man can live his, that was very evident in the story. And I know that these are themes that he explores quite a lot in his writing, and I'm really excited to read more of it. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Okay, the next book that I read in October was Mrs. March by Virginia Feito. This was a book I was sent by HarperCollins in New Zealand, so thank you for sending that through to me. I finally got around to reading it. They sent it to me in July. But it was a good time to read it. October, you know, I don't fully get into spooky books. I'm not like a thriller reader, but this was definitely more of a psychological paranoia book, and that's about as kind of close as I get to that thriller genre. So it's kind of the perfect October read for me. Mrs. March is the story of Mrs. March, who is a Upper East Side housewife. She's married to George March, who is a successful novelist. He's just written a novel, and it's the talk of the town. Everyone that they know is reading it. Everyone that they know is loving it. It's getting a lot of really good praise. And she is the ever proud wife who can say that that is her husband. One day, Mrs. March is on her usual morning ritual where she goes to pick up her standing order from her patisserie. The woman behind the counter that serves her is reading her husband's book, and she's kind of talking about it with her, and the comment is made that Mrs. March must be very proud because this book, the main character in this book, her husband has chosen to base it on her, and she must feel good that he's done that. This comment sends Miss March into a bit of a spin. She is immediately kind of disgusted. This character, although she hasn't read the book, this character has been described as somewhat unsavory. She is a prostitute who is described as being quite ugly and grotesque and very just not someone you probably want to be compared to if that's what you hear people saying about her. So she that's what sets the story in motion, and she runs out of the patisserie, and that really sets in the paranoia about within this character of Mrs. March towards her husband, towards other people. She is nervous and anxious and constantly thinking about what others may be thinking of her. She's an extremely unreliable narrator or character. You never know if the paranoias and the obsessions that she has around what people think about her are actually true. You get a real sense that a lot of it is just in her head, and that this is her completely coming undone. I really liked this book. I thought it was really well. The story was kind of plotted out really well. There were some issues kind of around the story and how I found some parts of it quite confusing. There were kind of mentions of something that had happened to her, and it kind of explained why she might be the way she is, but at the same time you don't really get a mention of it from then on, and yeah, it just kind of felt a little bit what is the word? I don't know, superfluous to the story. Like, the content of what it was felt a bit kind of unnecessary and just a bit like they needed something to explain why she was the way she was. I would have appreciated just having a character who was a bit kind of, I mean, as women we know what it's like to have those paranoias and those self-doubts about yourself and your partner, and what it can do to you psychologically and how it can kind of mess with your head. And I don't often think that those things always need to be explained with a moment or a something that happened in your life to make you that way. It could just be a complete spiral. So that's the only kind of critique I had. Gave me massive Eileen by Tessa Moshfegh vibes. It was, very similar. Okay, the last book that I read in October was Grand Union by Zadie Smith. This is a collection of short stories written in 2019, and I really, really liked these. I would say this is probably my first proper dip into Zadie Smith's writing, and I've kind of just been dipping. Like, I've read Intimations. That's obviously a very short collection of essays written during the pandemic. I really enjoyed the writing style. of those, so I was definitely keen to check out more of Zadie's writing, and I read that around Christmas, and I picked up Grand Union around that time as well, so finally got around to reading it nearly a year later. But yeah, I thought it was great. I thought that you got a real sense of her style of writing in this collection. It was such a weird and strange mix of genre. You had historical fiction, you had really contemporary stories, you had weird kind of sci-fi, you had stories set in New York, you had stories set in London, you had stories set in the Midwest. It was just so diverse, and just a big range in terms of what it is that she was writing about, and it kind of made it hard to pick up what the central theme through the stories were. This title of Grand Union, what does that mean? Is it this coming together of two worlds? And then I started thinking about how she was able to kind of hold these really different ideas quite closely together, and the nuance and the fine balance that she was able to achieve in the stories, where it was like, you know, you're dealing with things like race and privilege in the opening story, and that's very connected with the idea of sex and power and what that entails, and how those relationships kind of can work. And it just makes it, again, it's not a collection of stories that I think have really obvious kind of good and bad takeaways from it. It was really nuanced, it was really beautifully written, the pace of it was really fast and snappy, and I think, yeah, she's just a really smart, clever person. One of my favourite stories was, I have to get it down. One of my favourite stories was the second one, Sentimental Education, where we're talking about race and privilege and the education system, and different types of education. So like formal education and academia, but then kind of the education that you get from life, and the lessons that are learned through the different people that you meet and the experiences that they have. The Lazy River was a really good one. It reminded me of the TV show, is it Benidorm, where the English tourists go to the resort in Spain. It just had that really funny kind of look and observation of English tourists on holiday in these countries, and these specific types of groups, and what visiting abroad can often mean for people, how it's not actually a chance to, I guess, experience a new country or learn about a new culture, but just a chance to kind of take what it is that you know within your community and just put it somewhere else for a week. These places often become just like really small microcosms of like the UK, and it's quite funny. If you haven't seen that show, you should definitely watch it. It's hilarious. But this story, The Lazy River, kind of gave me that feeling. But yeah, really love this collection. Really want to read more of her writing now, because it was definitely the strength in her writing and the voice that I feel like carried through the stories that I couldn't put this down. Like I just want to read everything that she does now. So there we go. Okay, that is my October wrap up. That's what I read in October. Exciting things for November though. novellas in November, hosted by Rick McDonald, have started. I'm reading McGlue, which I'm really enjoying. Hopefully I'll finish that today. I love novellas, obviously. Really short guy. Fantastic. Also, Jessica's Tiny Book Stack. Jessica's Tiny Book Challenge is happening on the 15th of November for a week. How many tiny books can you read in a week? I'm going to try to go for one a day. That might be a bit ambitious, but we will see. Yeah, lots of exciting stuff planned for November. Tell me, what was your favourite read in October? Anyone read anything completely out there, weird, creepy, scary, all that kind of stuff for Halloween? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ka kite!